Good shot, kid. I think you got him. Good shot, kid. I think you got him.
Hello there and welcome back to some more Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Today we'll continue on Let's Play. This is episode 88. In today's episode we are taking a look at the final set of street races we have to do in this game, which are located in Los Santos, more specifically in Little Mexico. If you have not seen any of the street race episodes before, each race rewards the player with $10,000 on their first win. There's 9 races overall at this location, however, you only have to do 6 of them because in this location is the Lowrider race, Badlands A and Badlands B, which are all covered in the story mode of the game, more specifically quite early on in the story mode of the game, so you don't have to recomplete those, although you can go ahead and try and beat your best time. And unlike in the story missions, apart from one, the car is actually provided for you this time. It's not one where you have to go ahead and find your own vehicle. The first actual race here then is a little loop, which provides the player with an NRG 500 and it is a relatively short track. I will say these street races are actually the hardest of all of them in the game because of various reasons you'll see in a minute, but this one isn't too bad, although if you do make a mistake it can be difficult to catch the competition because it is such a short race. It only lasts about a minute, so that's something to definitely bear in mind while doing this. If you do slip up, there's a chance you might not be able to catch back to the competition, but you have got the NRG 500, which is the very best bike in the game, and I don't think there's that many other NRG 500s competing against you. Next up, however, the Back Road Wanderer. This is probably my least favourite race in the game, might be the hardest race in the game as well. So, Back Road Wanderer provides you with the FCR 900. We've spoke about this bike before. It's a very good bike. I love the FCR 900, however, it's the second best bike in the game, because the first best bike in the game is the NRG 500, and while you're given an FCR in this race, the AI is given an NRG 500. What you should make your mission during this is essentially taking out the NRG in drive-by attacks. The problem with that is there's not many straight bits of road here because the course is incredibly difficult. You're essentially driving in the hills of Los Santos, sort of around the Mulholland district and sort of up towards Rodeo, and bumpy roads means that there's plenty of room for error on your end. You can miss something, and of course because the other AI has an NRG 500, they're always going to be quicker than you. So, and also because they're an NRG, or because they're an AI, while they might be slightly stupid, they also pretty much know exactly what course to follow. So this one can definitely be very, very difficult indeed. As you can see, this one took about 3 or 4 attempts. I finally got lucky and took out the other opposing NRG 500, which you do, I think, is more necessary. You can drive this really, really well. However, because of the nature of the track, there's so much room for slip-ups, especially coming off this final bit here. A lot of sharp walls around here as you sort of go to the base of the mountain and start climbing back up, so you can definitely mess up around there, and it is a nightmare, this race, an absolute nightmare. Unfortunately though, while that race is a nightmare, you're not quite out of the woods next, because the next race is a city circuit, which once again provides the player with the FCR 900, and once again you have NRG to compete against. I believe, yes, it's just one NRG or 2 NRGs, 1 NRG. Admittedly, this race isn't as bad as Back Road Wanderer because it's a much more open track. You're essentially driving around the freeways, up into the city, and then back down into the freeway again, which means you're in a lot of straight bits of road. As you can see straight away there, I could take the NRG 500 out straight away, which means I've just got to worry about the fellow FCRs now, which does make this race a lot easier. However, you do have to be a little bit careful in this mission, especially watch out for the checkpoints. Los Santos races especially are a lot more insidious with their checkpoint placing. They like to place them quite far away from each other, and if you're not being careful you can take a wrong turn. That'll especially come up later on. But for now, other than having to take out the NRG, this race isn't too terrible. Again, the FCR 900, not ideal. I would prefer the NRG in order to get this done quicker. However, again, what you're essentially doing is just looping around the highways of the race, going slightly into the city, and then back out onto the main highway, going towards Grove Street and East Los Santos. So, not too much to mention during this one. Also, another thing to point out, during this section of the game, as we've seen in the story missions, you may or may not have riots on by this point, and riots do make these missions harder because you essentially can't trust any of the AI vehicle, AI traffic, because they could be on their way out of exploding. So sort of stay away from cars if you happen to be doing this during the riots. Fortunately, I wasn't. I would recommend you also avoid doing this during the riots. Next up, we have the Vinewood track, which gives you a Sunrise, which is a pretty weak vehicle. It's actually kind of a surprising choice. I quite like the Sunrise. I think design-wise it's pretty cool. I'm not quite sure what vehicle, real-life car it's supposed to be, but I quite like it. It's quite a sporty-looking thing. However, its face is cashing checks. Its ass can't quite meet. The vehicle is not quite as good as it looks. A little bit weak. The vehicle to be in this is definitely the Windsor, which is a light rear-wheel drive E-Type based sports car. That can be a bit tricky, but fortunately you're in a car, which means there's a lot more chance to mess, or a lot less chance to mess up than there is on the bike. You can't fall off of a car, or at least in this game, in GTA 4 you can fly through a windscreen, but that's not this game, so fortunately you don't have to worry about that too much. As you can see here, I go for a pit maneuver, which kind of backfired because he just, yeah. Maybe don't try and be me, don't try and go for cocky maneuvers. But you're sort of following the same kind of track that we were in Backroad Wanderer. Again though, because it's in a car, it's a lot easier, and because it's not in a supercar, it's a lot easier as well. You're in sort of a more normal vehicle. Again, admittedly, that does mean that the AI cars are quicker than you. However, they can mess up, and also the Sunrise is pretty planted. Might not be the quickest thing in the world, but it is relatively planted, short-footed. It won't try and do anything crazy. Just watch it over certain jumps and curbs and stuff, and also watch for the checkpoints. As you can see there, I was supposed to take a turn off somewhere. Fortunately, I dived off the bridge and actually managed to survive it. And then the AI decided to go into Destruction Derby mode there, so that kind of saved me out a bit. But as I said, watch out for those checkpoints, because they can definitely be insidious in where they place them, not quite telling you where to go. And of course there's no GPS in this game either, so you won't be helped out by that. So some of these races you may just simply have to try again, and then eventually you'll end up getting them. But as I did mention, this is the these are the hardest street races in the game, I personally find. So definitely more issues here than there are in the other ones, but then again, the rest of the street races have been relatively straightforward, so I guess there's got to be at least one location that tries to throw some nails at you. But either way, I drove pretty piss poor in this, but despite that, I ended up getting the win. I probably shouldn't have got the win, but I did, so I'm not going to complain all that much. You can probably do that in 2:30 quite easily without all the slip-ups I made, but never mind. Anyways, while we might have got a slight bit of reassurance from that race, it's time to go back to some pretty nightmarish stuff. Freeway. This race provides you with the Super GT. We've spoke about the Super GT before. It's one of my favourite styled cars in this game. However, it's very weak in terms of a supercar, and while there's a few Buffaloes in this race, for some reason you have to compete against Banshees, which can pretty much match you in a straight line but handle better. And more importantly, there is a Bullet, which is one of the very best supercars in the game, and that can be an issue. You might wonder why I've got police stars. That's because I was trying to drive by the Bullet in order to blow it up. However, that didn't really work out too well, so I wouldn't really recommend going for that strategy. This one really will just have to be trial and error, and attempt to drive as good as possible. Watch the checkpoints during this sort of Jefferson section, sort of towards East Los Santos, because one of these checkpoints makes it seem like you're supposed to go to the right. However, you're supposed to go straight on into the freeway, because if you go right, you will not be able to get down to the freeway, and essentially you may as well just blow the car up there and then, because it will be an instant failure. So you definitely have to watch out for that checkpoint, because that one can be very deceiving. And also don't be like me and just straight plow into this bit. I don't think I really helped myself in this race, considering I've got Super GT, which is the slidiest of all of the high-end sports cars, supercars in this game, as well as doing this in the rain. Probably didn't make this much better, but the Super GT, hopefully you've got a bit of practice of driving this thing in city slicking, as we've done previously. It's just a case of trying to keep that tail in check. It is quite difficult, especially when you're going against a bullet, but the one nice thing about the AI being in cars is usually they will trip over themselves and try and kill each other, as you sort of saw through the first section. Really, I feel this race is one of those which is sort of made and broke in the first section. The better off you can get, the better the AI sort of start tripping over each other and the bullet gets spun around and stuff like that. The better you'll do. I think that was a police car just sort of flew out of nowhere. That really woke me up, I believe, when I was actually playing. But yeah, no, not a too awful a race, I guess. It's just a case of getting lucky with the Super GT's handling and with the AI taking each other out. Always keep an eye on your mirrors and don't make too many mistakes. And finally, the last race we have to do in this game, into the country. This is an 8-kilometer trek all the way across the ring roads of San Andreas. As you can see here, I'm sort of going through, you can see Badlands A, Badlands B, and the lowrider race. I did redo them on my end, however I'm not going to be showing that footage because you don't need to redo them. I just figured I would, just in case something messed up, but it didn't, so yeah, you do not have to redo those. Anyways, into the country provides you with a bullet, and you're against fellow supercars and hypercars. Unlike the last one, however, though, and as we mentioned in the last one, actually, the bullet is a very, very good vehicle indeed. So this one shouldn't be too much of a problem, and the other advantage that you have during this is the traffic will trip the AI up. Admittedly, they'll try and trip you up as well, as you can see there. They like to make very sudden lane changes. However, the AI, as long as they're sort of relatively within range, are also struggling with that. So it's not too much of an issue. Also, there's only 4 cars in this race. Is this the only race that has less than 6 opponents? It might be. I've only just noticed that, though. That's interesting. Other than that one little aspect, however, though, this is the easiest race out of all of them, I would imagine. Yeah, I'd say this is the easiest. It's kind of similar to some of the races we've seen previously. For example, the ring road race in Las Venturas. It's just a case of following the motorway network all around Los Santos up towards the outskirts into Red County and then back through into Los Santos once again. The only real trouble you will have with this race, and once again I've seen this happen on a live stream before, if you decide to do this during riots, you can have issues with this. You'll sort of find abandoned bikes and stuff like that on fire all over the place, and chances are you'll end up hitting them. However, in case of just normal mode, just keep your speed up and you'll be alright. The one nice thing as well with the bullet is it's so quick that chances are it'll be quick enough to outrun the spawning of traffic half the time, which is nice. Another thing potentially for these street races, I think I've sort of alluded to this before, perhaps you might be better off doing these late at night as well, in terms of late in-game nighttime, because the traffic will be reduced at night, which can make this a lot easier. But yeah, as you can see, you could essentially ride in the same way during the LV ring road. You could sort of ride the hard shoulder. In this, in certain parts of it, you can ride the middle part of the freeway as well, and that'll essentially cut you off from traffic as well. As we get back into Los Santos, as you can see, traffic is starting to spawn through. Of course, just be careful. Again, we've seen how many issues you can have with AI changing lanes and stuff like that. Another thing with this, much like some of the other street races we've seen that involve supercars, it's also a little bit of a race of attrition, just a case of keeping your vehicle in good enough condition to finish. The AI by this point will probably be tangling with each other too much to really be too much of an issue. But just make sure you can keep your vehicle in decent mechanical state. The bullet, I do find, isn't particularly durable. Anyways, though, once you cross the finish line for winning every single race in the game, you get a colossal $1 million. I forgot about that. That was quite the shock when I saw that pop up. Yeah, $1 million for completing every single race in the game. That's certainly an incentive to do so. These were already pretty well paying, but now especially so. Anyways, that is it for all the street races in this game, and that means we've only got one more extra activity to do, and that's buy ourselves some safe houses here in Los Santos. So join us for that in the next episode. Until then, farewell.